Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive.
Great to be diving in.
Today we're tackling a question it's captivated humanity for generations, hasn't it?
Especially now, yeah.
Exactly, especially now with this renewed fervor in the space race. You've got figures like Elon Musk really pushing hard for a multiplanetary future.
It's definitely front and center in the public imagination again.
It is. And we hear these grand pronouncements, about colonizing Mars, building settlements, making new homes out there among the stars. But what does that truly mean for human life, for our actual existence as a species long term?
Yeah, the practicalities are often glossed over.
They really are. So the big question we're unpacking today is it genuinely possible or, even easily achievable for humans to establish a truly self-sustaining presence on Mars? Particularly when it comes down to the most fundamental aspect of long-term survival, actually making new humans, reproduction.
Yes. It's an absolutely fascinating area and profoundly complex. It goes so far beyond just the engineering challenge of, getting people there.
Yeah. Right. It's not just about the rockets.
Not at all. If we're genuinely talking about establishing a truly self-sustaining presence off Earth, somewhere generations can live and thrive independently, then reproduction isn't just an aspiration. It's not a nice to have. It is, in fact, a fundamental, non-negotiable requirement.
A biological imperative for a colony, really.
Precisely. But, and this is the huge but we'll explore today, space is an incredibly hostile environment. It's just inherently unforgiving to the incredibly delicate, intricate process of creating and nurturing new life.
So where are we pulling our information from for this deep dive? What's the source space look like?
It's pretty comprehensive.
Yeah.
We're drawing from the scientific spectrum foundational papers in places like Discover Magazine, Frontiers in Cell, and Developmental Biology. We're also looking at broader discussions in the Times of India and Science Focus, which actually includes some interesting insights from a company called Spaceborne United. And then there's the crucial policy and ethical analysis side. We've got publications from the Blue Marble Space Institute of Science, AIAA, the Journal of Science Policy and Governance, and even looking at public discourse, like on Reddit's Our Futurology, plus PLOS blogs.
So a really wide net.
Exactly. Our mission today is to meticulously pull out the most important facts, the latest scientific findings, and crucially, the profound ethical considerations surrounding human reproduction in space. We want to give you, the listener, a comprehensive, nuanced understanding of this colossal and often kind of overlooked challenge.
Okay, let's truly unpack this then.
Sure.
Straight away, our sources highlight two, monumental environmental factors working directly against us out there. Gravity, or rather the startling lack of it, and radiation.
The big two.
Yeah. Here on Earth, we are, let's just say, quite successful at reproduction.
Look, understatement of the millennium, perhaps?
Maybe. With over 8 billion of us roaming the planet and that number still growing, our biology is incredibly well adapted to this place, our home. But the moment you venture into space, all those finely tuned reproductive skills honed over millennia are put to the absolute existential test.
It's not just discomfort, is it? It's a fundamentally different biological reality.
Exactly.
And it's crucial to remember why humans, and really all known life on Earth, evolved over billions of years for Earth's very specific conditions. Think about it. Our consistent, significant gravitational pull, what we just call 1G, normal gravity.
Yeah, we don't even think about it.
We don't. And our abundant sunshine, filtered just right. And perhaps most critically, the robust protection offered by our atmosphere and Earth's powerful magnetic field. That magnetic field acts like this huge invisible shield, right? It protects us from the sun's harshest energy and those relentless cosmic rays coming from deep space.
Okay, so Earth is basically a cozy, protected bubble for life.
In many ways, yes. Mars, on the other hand, it's a stark, unforgiving contrast. It's intensely frigid. Temperatures plummet way, way below anything habitable without serious life support. It only has a fraction of Earth's gravity, about 0.38 G, so roughly a third of what we're used to.
Just over a third. Yeah.
And crucially, it offers virtually no natural protection from hazardous radiation. No global magnetic field to speak of. Very thin atmosphere.
So these differences are not just inconveniences, like needing a good coat.
Not at all. They pose what you might call existential threats to human biology, particularly to something as intricate, delicate, and vulnerable as reproduction. It's a fundamental mismatch between our evolved biology and the raw space environment.
Okay, so let's really dig into those two primary threats then. The lack of gravity or microgravity, and this ever-present invisible danger of space radiation. When we talk about these factors, what exactly do they do to the human body, especially to the systems involved in making a baby? It sounds like it goes way beyond just, feeling a bit off.
Oh, it absolutely does. The effects are profound, systemic. Let's start with gravity, or rather its absence in orbit, microgravity. We've known since NASA's Gemini missions way back in the 1960s that space travel is inherently hazardous to the human body. It takes a toll.
Right. The early days showed us that pretty clearly.
They did. Astronauts experience significant physical degradation, even over relatively short periods. Get this. Bone density in their feet can drop by as much as 6% after less than 2 weeks in space.
6% in 2 weeks. That's huge.
It's an alarming rate of bone loss, like advanced osteoporosis, but happening incredibly fast, and muscles. They atrophy, they waste away even faster. The body struggles with a whole cascade of issues. Generalized bone loss, not just feet, significant muscle atrophy, decreased cardiovascular capacity. The heart just doesn't have to work as hard against gravity, so it weakens. Impaired vision is common, often due to fluid shifts towards the head, and significant widespread changes to the immune system. Astronauts get sick more easily.
Okay, so all of that would be incredibly tough for anyone, but for someone pregnant.
Exactly. Enormously impactful on any individual, but especially on a pregnant person, whose body is already undergoing immense strain and transformation. But the question isn't just about adult health maintenance. It's about how microgravity affects the really delicate, precise, sequential biological processes. Sperm and egg development inside the reproductive organs, the critical moment of fertilization itself, and then that whole 9-month journey of pregnancy, which is arguably the most complex biological process a human body ever undergoes.
And the bottom line is?
The bottom line is stark. Scientists, frankly, don't even know if women can get pregnant, let alone successfully stay pregnant and carry a fetus to term in space. This is a foundational, enormous biological and medical unknown. It just looms large over any serious multiplanetary aspirations.
A massive question mark.
Huge.
And then there's radiation, the invisible threat. We hear about it a lot, but maybe don't fully grasp the implications, especially for reproduction. What exactly is it, and why is it such a problem?
This is truly critical, yeah, and its impact is often underestimated, I think. Cosmic rays are, well, they're just ubiquitous everywhere in space, and they penetrate to varying degrees, even inside space stations. These are high-energy particles, and they're known to cause a range of severe biological damage.
Like cancer.
Yes, significantly increased cancer risk, also tissue degeneration, and over time, inevitable damage to our DNA, the actual blueprint of our cells, plus disruption to the nervous system.
How does it actually damage us? What's the mechanism?
It's pretty insidious. Beyond Earth's atmosphere, our magnetic shield is gone.
Yeah.
Right. So we're constantly bombarded by high-energy radiation. It comes from 2 main places. First, powerful bursts from solar flares eruptions on our own sun.
Solar storms. Yeah.
Exactly. And second, galactic cosmic rays, GCR. These come from way outside our solar system, distant exploding stars, other cosmic events. These rays are essentially ionized particles, atomic nuclei, stripped of electrons, zipping along at nearly the speed of light.
Wow.
They have incredible penetrative power. They go through spacecraft hulls, through human bodies, and when they hit our cells, they strip electrons from our biological molecules, directly damaging the DNA inside. This damage can cause cells to mutate, that's the cancer link, or just malfunction and die off, significantly increasing the risk of all sorts of diseases.
So anyone traveling to Mars is just constantly exposed.
Constantly and unavoidably. Any long-duration mission beyond Earth's magnetic field, Moon, Mars, deep space puts astronauts at risk from both this background GCR and those sudden, intense solar flares. This means we absolutely need robust, multi-layered radiation shielding on any long-term outpost, whether it's on the Moon, Mars, or in a space habitat. Without it, the biological risks are simply too high for long-term survival, let alone for something as incredibly sensitive as reproduction.
So it really shifts the question, doesn't it? It's not just can we build a base, it's more like can our bodies fundamentally even work there, function in a way that allows us to continue as a species.
That's the core biological challenge, yes.
Yeah. And here's where it gets really, really interesting, because as far as we know, nobody has ever actually had sex in space.
That's a widely accepted understanding, yes.
And it's not just about finding a private corner on the ISS, although I imagine that's tricky enough.
Yeah. Probably.
It's the sheer physics of it. I mean, how do you even manage that in zero gravity? It sounds, well, awkward.
Indeed. It's a surprisingly practical, almost comical challenge, isn't it? But it highlights how deeply ingrained gravity is in our everyday physical interactions. Without gravity, just keeping hold of your partner, to accomplish something as physically intimate as sex might be incredibly difficult.
You just float apart.
Potentially, yes. Every push could send you drifting away. Imagine the sheer logistical hurdle.
Yeah.
And even if you somehow manage that physical challenge, the biological one remains. Functional sperm and egg cells still need to successfully meet up and fuse to kickstart a pregnancy. That seemingly simple act requires this whole cascade of cellular actions: the sperm's directed swimming, the egg's receptivity, the precise signaling upon contact, all working perfectly in sequence.
Things we totally take for granted here.
Completely. It truly highlights how Earth's constant familiar gravity and the biomechanics tied to it are implicitly assumed in countless biological processes. Our bodies are just calibrated for 1G.
Okay, so given these huge biological unknowns, it makes sense that scientists have been trying to crack these reproductive mysteries for decades, right? Pretty much since the space race began.
Absolutely. The need was recognized early on.
So what have they found? Particularly looking at animal models, what clues can they give us?
Well, the results have been a real mixed bag. Some promising early surprises, definitely, but then some significant roadblocks as they moved up the complexity chain. Early on, with non-mammalian life, astronauts actually took this fascinating array of creatures into orbit. Fish, roundworms, frogs, salamanders.
Orbital space arc?
Kind of. And in what were definitely promising surprises, all of these simpler species managed to produce healthy offspring in microgravity. So xenompus frogs, sea urchins, fruit flies, Drosophila, Medaka fish, they all showed successful development, even reproduction, in space.
Okay, so that must have generated some optimism initially.
It did provide a glimmer of hope, yeah. It suggested that maybe life in its more basic forms could find a way to adapt and propagate out there.
I'm sensing a but coming. I'm guessing that optimism hit a bit of a wall when they moved to mammals. Because, well, we're mammals, our systems are way more complex.
You are absolutely right. The narrative hit a very significant wall with mammals. A really pivotal study was back in 1979. Male and female rats were aboard a Russian satellite. And during an 18.5-day mission, they either failed to fertilize any eggs or, maybe even more surprisingly, they just chose not to have sex.
The rats went celibate. In space.
Essentially, yes. Researchers called it rodent abstinence, and it's practically unheard of on Earth. Rats are, shall we say, notoriously prolific.
Okay, so that immediately flagged a big problem. Something about space was shutting down mammalian reproduction.
Exactly. And why mammals are different is key here. Unlike fish or frogs, rodents are mammals. Their anatomy, physiology, genetics much closer to ours. Experts like Teresa Woodruff and Toruhiko Wakayama agree that the problems seen in early mouse pregnancies are highly likely to mirror issues humans would face.
Right.
And crucially, only mammals have a placenta, that vital organ for nurturing the fetus. So mammalian models are absolutely essential for studying how placenta development might work or fail in space.
So mice became the main stand-in for humans then. What has Wakayama's space pup mission and other mouse research actually shown us? What are the key takeaways?
Toruhiko Wakayama, yes, a professor at the University of Yamanashi in Japan. He's really been a pioneer here. Back in 2009, he started with simulated microgravity experiments on Earth. He extracted mouse eggs and sperm, put them in a special device simulating microgravity. Sperm fertilized the eggs, okay? Then, after a few days, they implanted these embryos into female mice back in normal Earth gravity.
And the results?
Mixed, definitely mixed. While a good number of normal, healthy pups were born, significantly fewer embryos developed properly compared to the control group in regular gravity. Many just failed after implantation.
So even the earliest stages were being hit hard.
Exactly. It strongly indicated that those very first steps of embryonic development were being negatively impacted, even by simulated microgravity. So, to see if this held up in real space, with radiation added to the mix, he launched the Space Pup mission.
Right, the one with the freeze-dried sperm.
That's the one. Trying to keep live mice breeding on the ISS was just too complex logistically. So instead, his team freeze-dried mouse sperm, a preservation technique, and sent 3 batches up in 2013. One batch stayed for 9 months, another for 3 years, and the last for 6 years.
Wow, long-term exposure. What did they find from the first batch?
The 9-month results were intriguing. Some sperm showed slight DNA damage, likely from radiation, yes. But remarkably, they still produced normal, healthy pups when used for fertilization back on Earth.
That's surprisingly positive in a way.
It was. Analysis of the 3-year samples is ongoing, and the 6-year samples were due back around spring 2019, so those results should be available now, actually. Highly anticipated.
And if the freeze-drying works long-term?
If it proves effective, Wakayama's next big step is to send frozen mouse embryos to the ISS to really dig into why they don't seem to fully develop in space when exposed from the very beginning. That's the crucial next question.
Okay, incredible work with mice. But mice aren't humans. What about research with actual human sperm and eggs? Has anyone tried anything like Space Pup, but with human cells? What did Micro 11 show?
That's the vital next step, isn't it? Moving towards human relevance. Joseph Tash at the University of Kansas Medical Center, he's been working with NASA on this since '96. In April 2018, he launched a landmark experiment called Micro 11. They sent frozen human sperm samples from 12 healthy men up to the ISS.
Okay.
Astronauts thawed the samples, added chemicals to trigger swimming, and then filmed their movements under a high-powered microscope right there on the station.
What were they looking for specifically?
The main goal was to see if human sperm were physically capable of the necessary movements and changes required for fertilization in microgravity. Things like changes in the sperm head shape and achieving hypermotility that faster swimming needed to penetrate the egg.
And the results? Are they out?
The samples came back to Earth. Tash mentioned the analysis would take about a year from 2018, so yes, those results should be available now, although maybe not widely published in full detail yet. The community is definitely watching for them.
So that covers the male side potentially, but female fertility is often seen as even more complex, right? The cycle, carrying the pregnancy. What do we know about how space might impact that?
Absolutely. Female fertility presents distinct, arguably more intricate concerns. Tash's earlier studies back in 2010, 2011 looked at female mice returning from space shuttle missions. And he found something really worrying. Their corpora lutea, these temporary glands in the ovary, absolutely essential for producing hormones like progesterone to support early pregnancy. They were either completely absent or present in very, very few numbers after just 2 weeks in orbit.
Wow. So the basic machinery for supporting a pregnancy might just not be there.
That's the strong implication. It suggests serious potential reproductive problems for females.
Yeah.
The very hormonal environment needed for conception and early pregnancy might be severely disrupted.
So what's next on that front?
Tash is planning a crucial follow-up, sending live female mice on a longer trip to the ISS, 30 to 37 days, to study their entire reproductive cycle in space and try to pinpoint why they struggle, focusing specifically on the female response. And looking even further ahead, Teresa Woodruff at Northwestern University is planning truly groundbreaking research involving human embryos.
Human embryos in space.
If it gets funded, yes. The plan is to send frozen human eggs and sperm to space to see if they can actually lead to fertilization and the very beginnings of pregnancy outside Earth's gravity. She plans to use the zinc spark, this literal flash of zinc that happens the moment an egg is fertilized, as a clear indicator.
A visual confirmation of conception in space?
Exactly. It would be direct, irrefutable evidence, really pushing the boundaries of our understanding.
So, okay, the picture emerging is non-mammals seem somewhat okay, but mammals, especially mice, show really clear, persistent difficulties with conception and early embryonic development, which begs the question, what's going on at the cellular and molecular level? Deep inside the cells, why is it so hard for mammals?
That's the critical question, isn't it? And there's a key paper, Effects of Microgravity on Early Embryonic Development and Embryonic Stem Cell Differentiation, that really dives into these deeper mechanisms. It's not just the whole organism, it's the building blocks. Let's look at embryonic stem cells, ESCs. These are the master cells, right? They can become anything. Microgravity seems to profoundly affect their ability to self-renew, basically, to divide and stay as stem cells.
How so?
Well, some studies show higher cell survival, more proliferation, higher levels of octet-4. That's a key stemness factor in simulated microgravity or on space missions.
Which sounds good.
Maybe helpful for keeping them as stem cells. Potentially. But other studies find the opposite. Increased apoptosis, which is programmed cell death, and fewer adherent cells, meaning they're less able to stick together and form tissues.
So conflicting results.
Somewhat conflicting, yes. But the clear takeaway is that microgravity significantly disrupts ESC self-renewal. It throws off that delicate balance needed for them to function properly as the foundation for development.
Okay, so their ability to just be stem cells is affected. What about how they become specialized tissues? Differentiation, how does microgravity mess with that?
That's where it gets really complex, too. Microgravity directly affects how ESCs differentiate into those three primary germ layers, mesoderm, endoderm, ectoderm, which form everything in the body. Studies suggest microgravity tends to promote differentiation into mesoderm, think heart muscle cells, blood vessel formation, and also endoderm, which forms things like liver cells. This seems to happen by messing with crucial cell communication systems, like the Wnt signaling pathway. But differentiation into ectoderm, which forms the nervous system, the brain, skin that seems more complicated, less clear, needs more research.
So it's not an even effect. Some lineages might be pushed, others hindered.
It appears that way, yes, which means even if a pregnancy progressed, the development of specific organ systems could be profoundly altered, skewed.
So what are the specific molecular things happening inside the cells that cause all this? What's the machinery breaking down?
We're seeing several critical changes at the molecular level.
Yeah.
First, the cytoskeleton. That's the cell's internal scaffolding, right? Because its shape, structure, vital for division, signaling.
Right.
Microgravity messes with the cytoskeleton structure, changes the levels of related proteins. It even regulates the genes for the building blocks of this scaffolding. Disrupting this internal skeleton has knock-on effects everywhere else in the cell.
Okay, so the cell's structure is compromised. What else?
Second, those vital signaling pathways we mentioned, like Wnt. Think of them as communication lines inside and between cells, telling them what to do, when to divide, what to become. Microgravity impacts these pathways. If the signals get jammed or altered, cells don't develop correctly. Third, and this is a big one, the space environment, is that double whammy, microgravity and radiation.
Right, you can't separate them easily in real space.
Exactly. RNA sequencing of mouse ESCs that actually went to space showed a worrying downregulation of DNA repair genes.
So the cell's ability to fix damage is reduced.
It seems that way. The cellular repair crew is either less active, less present, or maybe just overwhelmed. Plus, simulated microgravity itself can promote the formation of reactive oxygen species, ROS.
Free radicals.
Basically, yes. Highly unstable molecules that cause oxidative stress, damage DNA directly, make it more sensitive to radiation damage. So microgravity might be a weak stress on its own, but it definitely aggravates genomic instability, makes the DNA more vulnerable.
And you mentioned epigenetics, changes to how genes are read.
Yes, this is fascinating and relatively recent. Research found microgravity changes DNA methylation. That's an epigenetic tag that turns genes on or off at over 6,000 different sites in the genomes of blastocyst cells. This impacts how DNA is packaged, chromatin structure, how RNA is processed, fundamentally altering how the genetic instruction manual is read during those critical early stages. It suggests a really deep level of disruption.
Okay, those molecular details are intense. How does all that translate back to what we actually see happening with early mouse embryos? Why do they struggle so much?
The effects are clear and quite dramatic. Early-stage mouse pregnancies, those exposed right from the start, consistently fail to produce viable offspring, period.
A critical window of vulnerability, then.
Seems very likely. Interestingly, though, if the exposure starts later, in middle or late-stage pregnancy, they can sometimes result in viable fetuses after return to Earth. This really points to those very first days and weeks being the most sensitive, perhaps linked to the formation of poor-quality blastocysts, that very early embryo stage needed for implantation.
And in IVF studies.
In simulated microgravity, yes, you can get fertilization with mouse IVF. But the subsequent development, before implantation, it's badly affected. Slower development, fewer cells in the outer layer needed for the placenta, and significantly fewer embryos actually reaching the blastocyst stage at all.
And the real space experiments confirm this.
Sadly, yes. The Columbia Shuttle experiment. None of the 49 two-cell mouse embryos developed further. Another mission, SJ8. None of 100 four-cell embryos made it to blastocyst. Even on a later mission, SJ10, where some did develop to blastocysts, their formation and quality were clearly compromised. It's a consistent pattern of early developmental failure or impairment.
So we've covered the broad issues, the cellular details. What are the specific molecular culprits thought to be driving these developmental problems? What's the trigger?
Researchers are still piecing it all together, but some key players have emerged. One is a protein called stress-activated protein kinase, or SAPK. It's involved in cell growth and stress response. Microgravity affects its activity. Interestingly, blocking SAPK can reduce some embryonic stress, but cell death still remains high, so it's not the whole story.
Okay, what else?
Nitric oxide, NO. It's a crucial signaling molecule for normal embryo development on Earth. But microgravity seems to ramp up its production. Too much NO can actually retard development and cause cell death, so an imbalance could be really harmful.
Like too much of a good thing being bad.
Exactly. And third, oxidative stress, which we touched on. Microgravity causes it, generates those damaging ROS molecules. Studies in frog embryos show they try to ramp up antioxidant defenses in microgravity, fighting back against this stress, but perhaps not always successfully.
And epigenetics again.
Yes, it keeps coming back. Those changes in DNA methylation, altering gene expression, impacting how DNA is packaged, even affecting the cytoskeleton structure, they're strongly implicated in causing these early developmental problems. It's likely a complex interplay of all these factors: stress responses, signaling imbalances, structural issues, and fundamental changes in gene expression.
Okay, so if conception and just getting through those first few days or weeks are such massive hurdles, what about actually carrying a pregnancy to term? And then, the actual act of giving birth in space. It just sounds completely beyond anything we know, like pure sci-fi.
It absolutely borders on science fiction right now, yes. And the challenges are enormous, pushing the very limits of human biology and medicine. Professor Arun Vivian Holden put it quite plainly: while space birth might be theoretically possible, nearly every single stage would be impacted in unpredictable, potentially catastrophic ways.
Let's break that down. Just carrying the pregnancy, what are the big issues there?
Okay, even if conception happens, pregnancy in zero or partial gravity, huge complications. Think about basic medical care: performing prenatal checks, dealing with an emergency, even just managing fluids when everything floats. It's a logistical nightmare for doctors.
Right.
Then there's maternal health. Pregnancy is inherently risky on Earth. In space, likely even more hazardous. The risk of miscarriage, probably much higher in that stressful environment. We already know astronauts lose bone density, muscle mass, their immune system changes. Maintaining health, especially bone health, with the calcium demands of pregnancy, would require intense diet, exercise, maybe drugs.
And just basic needs.
Basic needs become critical challenges. Consistent, adequate nutrition with the right profile, enough oxygen, clean water, all harder to guarantee off Earth, and a pregnant woman needs more. Hormones are another huge factor. Spaceflight stress to gravity changes, radiation, isolation, weird sleep, diet shifts. It all messes with the HPG axis, the master controller for reproduction and stress.
So hormone levels could be all over the place.
Potentially, yes. Reduced testosterone is seen in men. Changes in women's estrogen cycles are noted, though we need much more research there. Even oxytocin, important for stress and bonding, seems reduced after spaceflight. Plus, astronauts face genitourinary issues. UTIs are more common in women, prostatitis in men. Problems with bladder emptying in microgravity could worsen these, a real risk for someone pregnant. Kidney stones are also a known hazard.
It just sounds like a cascade of potential problems.
It really is. Even brain health changes in hormones can disrupt sleep, and poor sleep affects hormones. It's a potential negative feedback loop impacting overall well-being.
Okay. So assuming someone miraculously navigates all of that, a huge if, what about the actual physical act of childbirth? Pushing a baby out without gravity's help, how could that possibly work?
It's an immense physical challenge, yeah. It requires totally rethinking normal procedures. On Earth, gravity helps the baby descend. In microgravity, that assistance is just gone. The mother has to do all the work against no resistance, which sounds easy but makes directed pushing incredibly difficult.
Have animal studies shown anything here?
Rat studies show births in space are challenging. The mothers lost significant weight, had hormonal changes. But interestingly, they did still manage to give birth to normal-sized babies and care for them.
So it's possible, but hard.
Possible for rats, yes. But humans are different. The stresses are likely far greater. It offers a tiny glimmer, but that's all. Based on midwifery experience and space conditions, the thinking is that a squatting position might actually be best for space birth.
Squatting. Why?
It naturally straightens the birth canal, increases pressure to help dilation, can strengthen contractions, improves breathing, reduces pressure on veins, and lets the mother use her force more effectively. It might even shorten the pushing stage.
Are there downsides?
Yes, potentially increased risk of vaginal tearing, maybe due to altered tissue integrity from microgravity. Other options, maybe sitting or walking on a special treadmill for resistance. But lying on the back, strictly prohibited. Too risky for blood flow.
And what about the baby during all this? The launch, the birth itself? Are there unique risks for the fetus?
Absolutely, and these are some of the most serious concerns. High G-forces during launch could cause placental detachment or rupture the amniotic sac, both life-threatening emergencies.
So you'd need perfect timing, maybe induced labor?
Probably. Ensuring the baby is head down, the cervix is dilated a bit before launch. It will require meticulous planning. There's even a highly controversial idea based on preliminary research suggesting women might have lower G tolerance. Some have hypothesized that selecting male fetuses for space birth might theoretically reduce fetal death risk. But that's ethically explosive.
Wow, yeah, that's stepping into really difficult territory.
Extremely difficult.
Yeah.
The goal would obviously be a full-term baby, 37, 42 weeks. Induction on Earth around 37-38 weeks for a planned delivery seems most logical. And average weight, 2,900 to 3,100 grams, is also preferred to minimize complications.
Okay, and then the baby is born. What happens next? What's life like for that child growing up in that alien environment? Developmentally, physically, cognitively.
This is where the concerns become really profound, perhaps the most unsettling. Post-birth challenges. Microgravity or partial gravity could profoundly interfere with physical development. Think about learning posture, balance, coordination. On Earth, these milestones rely heavily on gravity cues from birth. Without those cues, or with altered cues on Mars, motor skills could be severely delayed or just fundamentally different. How does a child even learn to walk?
Their whole physical development could be altered.
Potentially, yes, creating a physiology unlike anything on Earth. And then there's the brain. A newborn's brain is still developing incredibly rapidly, making it exquisitely vulnerable to radiation damage. That constant radiation bombardment could significantly impact cognition, learning, long-term neurological health. Studies on irradiated fetuses on Earth show links to stunted growth, smaller heads, mental retardation, especially with exposure early on.
So the risks are known, even if the exact outcomes in space aren't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which leads to that deeply uncomfortable ethical quandary. A baby born off Earth would, by definition, be the subject of an experiment, involuntarily.
Yeah, that phrase really hits hard.
It does, because it raises unavoidable questions about consent, human rights, and the fundamental well-being of the most vulnerable.
Okay, we keep circling back to radiation. It feels like this pervasive, almost insurmountable barrier. Can you elaborate more on the types, the levels, and the specific impacts on fertility and developing life?
Absolutely. It's critical, often misunderstood, and arguably the single biggest biological hurdle. Outside Earth's magnetic shield, the radiation levels are just astronomically higher. For context, ISS astronauts get maybe 54 to 108 millisieverts, MSV, over 6 months. Still way higher than on Earth, but somewhat manageable.
And from Mars.
Dramatically higher. Transit could be 210 to over 1,000 millisieverts per year. On the surface, 80 to 330 millisieverts per year. A round trip 6 months there, 18 months surface, 6 months back, could total around 10 to 70 millisieverts over 2.5 years.
How bad is that?
That averages to about 425 millisieverts per year, which is dangerously close to the 500 millisieverts threshold linked to a significantly increased lifetime cancer risk.
Okay, that's a serious dose. Where's it all coming from again?
Two main sources. First, those unpredictable solar particle events, SPEs, intense bursts from solar flares, especially during solar maximum. High energy, sudden storms. Second, the constant galactic cosmic radiation, GCR, from deep space. Super high energy particles, nuclei traveling near light speed. Harder to shield against because they're so energetic and constant, especially during solar minimum when the sun's shield is weaker.
And shielding is tricky.
Very tricky. GCR particles can penetrate thin shielding and create secondary, also harmful particles when they hit. Hydrogen-rich materials like water or certain plastics are better because they slow down GCR without creating as many secondary issues, but you need a lot of it.
Okay, so we're bathed in this stuff. What are the biological effects, specifically on fertility and development? You mentioned genetic, somatic, teratogenic.
Right. 3 categories of damage. First, genetic effects. This is damage to the DNA in the sperm or egg cells before conception. If chromosomes get altered, that mutation is passed to the fetus and potentially future generations. Inherited disorders. Second, somatic effects. Physical damage limited to the exposed person. Acute high doses cause immediate organ damage, cancer risk. Prolonged doses, like on a Mars trip, cause damage that builds up over time. Our reproductive organs are quite susceptible to somatic damage, potentially leading to infertility.
Is the risk the same for men and women?
Not quite. Ovaries are actually a bit more radiation resistant. Women are less prone to temporary sterility. Men might experience temporary sterility with an acute dose of 1,500 millisV or a prolonged dose of 400 millisV just to the organs. Permanent sterility for both sexes. That starts around 2 sieverts or 2,000 millisV per year. So the estimated 425 millisV from Mars likely won't cause permanent sterility, but temporary issues are definitely possible, especially during high solar activity.
Okay. And the third one, teratogenic effects. That sounds like the scariest one for babies.
It is profoundly concerning, yes. Teratogenic effects happen from radiation exposure during pregnancy, affecting the developing embryo and fetus. Radiation penetrates the fetus, damages cells, disrupts development. It can lead to physical deformities, stunted growth, small head, microcephaly, small eyes, microphthalmos, or severe brain malformations causing mental retardation. Earth-based studies, sadly, confirm these risks.
Are certain times in pregnancy more dangerous for this?
Absolutely. Vulnerability varies dramatically. Mouse studies correlating to human stages show this clearly. Stage 1, less than 3 weeks human equivalent. Exposure usually leads to death of the embryo. Too early, too vulnerable. Stages 2 and 3, roughly 3 16 weeks human. This is the peak danger zone. Drastic increase in intellectual deficits, brain organ abnormalities, often mental retardation. This is when key organs are forming rapidly.
The most critical window.
By far. Stage 4, around 17-24 weeks, the risk of severe physical deformity starts to decline. Major systems are mostly formed. Stage 5, over 25 weeks. Abnormalities approach normal background levels. Mental deficits less common, though subtle effects are still possible.
So even if the expected Mars doses aren't typically that high in one go, the risk is still significant.
Immensely significant. And consider this. The FAA limit for a pregnant aircrew member is 1 mSv for the entire pregnancy. Maybe 0.5 mSv per month. Compare that to hundreds of MSV per year in space. It's a staggering difference. Plus, radiation can destroy the egg cells within a female fetus while she's still in the womb, impacting her future fertility before she's even born.
This brings us right back to that crucial, unsettling point, the ethics. If the biology is this hard, the risks this severe, what are the ethical implications of even trying to have babies in space? That subject of an experiment idea.
It really cuts to the core, doesn't it? It becomes deeply philosophical. That experiment label comes directly from the profound unknowns. We evolved here. We simply don't know how Mars's environment, the low gravity, radiation, thin air, will affect babies long term. Even if we protect the gametes, how does pregnancy itself unfold? We just don't know.
And our rules here on Earth?
Our rules here are built on protecting individuals, especially children. We don't typically endorse sacrificing individuals for group benefit. Laws protect the right to life. A baby born on Mars is, by definition, part of an unprecedented involuntary experiment with unknown, potentially severe, lifelong consequences. It fundamentally challenges our concepts of human and child rights.
Because we know space is dangerous.
We know it's not healthy.
Yeah.
ISS gets 300 mSv a year plus microgravity effects. Ethically, knowingly testing pregnancy in those conditions, given the high risks of deformation or disability, it's hugely contentious. It would face massive resistance from any ethical review board on Earth. It forces that ultimate moral dilemma. Is expanding into space worth the potential suffering of the first generation born there?
So if establishing a colony means accepting these risks, are we talking about needing a totally different moral framework? Would a Martian society have different values?
That's the profound question. These kids would be born on another planet, in an isolated community unlike any on Earth. Would they follow Earth's morals? Or would the extreme environment forge a new set of rules? Think about small, isolated crews, a fragile colony fighting for survival. The value of the group might become paramount, potentially outweighing the individual, potentially leading to policies unthinkable on Earth. Things like abortion for medical or resource reasons becoming standard practice. Euthanasia for the terminally ill to conserve resources. Maybe even expecting individual sacrifice for the group's good. Actions that clash directly with many Earth-based ethics, especially Western individualism.
It sounds like a shift towards consequentialism, judging actions by their outcomes for the group.
Exactly. Deontology focuses on universal rules. Abortion is wrong, period. Consequentialism looks at outcomes. If a disabled baby strains resources vital for group survival on Mars, a consequentialist view might see abortion as the right choice. The harsh environment could push values that way, prioritizing collective well-being above all else.
Which could lead to some incredibly controversial, maybe even chilling solutions just to make the colony viable. Are we talking about things like eugenics?
The sources and the philosophical logic suggest that to ensure a healthy, long-lasting population on Mars, planners might feel forced to consider things like, well, gene editing, genetic pre-selection of partners, highly structured reproduction policies.
That sounds exactly like eugenics.
On Earth, it absolutely carries that toxic historical baggage. Eugenics is deeply problematic, linked to horrific abuses. The mere suggestion is alarming. Even the term miscegenation comes up, used not racially, but to mean careful genetic pairing for optimal outcomes. Again, hugely controversial here, but framed by some as potentially necessary for Martian survival.
And abortion policies.
Might be applied in a much broader extent than on Earth. A pregnancy threatening the mother, or likely resulting in severe disability. Under that harsh consequentialist lens, abortion could become an unquestionable choice to protect the group. Colony members might even need to accept giving up a baby if necessary for the group's survival.
That's a heavy thought.
Incredibly heavy. And if gene editing did create Mars-adapted humans, we could see a new subspecies emerge, suited for Mars, but maybe finding Earth challenging. A fundamental split in humanity. Plus, there's that huge ethical leap from animal studies to humans. Some argue human experiments, despite risks, will eventually be necessary for colonization. A profound moral dilemma. Can we justify potential harm to individuals for species expansion?
Okay, so the challenges are immense biological, ethical. Given all that, what are the proposed solutions? What's the actual future look like? Is anyone really working on this practically?
Yes, absolutely. Despite the huge difficulties that human drive to explore means research and planning are underway.
Mm,
People are trying to solve this. A critical proposed solution is artificial gravity, seen as pretty much essential for long-term health. We know microgravity causes muscle atrophy, bone loss, vision problems.
right, the body just doesn't cope well long term.
Yeah, it doesn't. Artificial gravity, maybe Earth level, could be achieved with rotating habitats, either large spinning structures in space, or perhaps horizontally rotating sections on the Moon or Mars with angled floors. This could mitigate many of the physiological problems.
Make it more Earth-like for our bodies.
Exactly. The other big one is radiation shielding. Absolutely crucial. Needs to protect from constant GCR and sudden solar flares. Artificial rotating habitats in low Earth orbit might be a good starting point, as they'd still get some protection from Earth's magnetic field. Those sci-fi domes on the surface. Probably unrealistic without first solving gravity and radiation. Real surface shielding likely means building deep underground or using meters of Martian soil.
Okay, so hardware solutions. What about policies for the astronauts themselves to lessen the risks?
The Journal of Science Policy and Governance has some pragmatic ideas. First, age restrictions. They suggest barring younger astronauts, maybe under 40, from deep space missions. Less remaining life for radiation-induced cancer to appear, and less likely to face infertility issues as reproductive years are waning. NASA already has age gender-based career radiation limits, reflecting this reduced long-term risk for older individuals.
Makes sense. I know.
Mandating personal radiation protection garments, PRPGs, hydrogen-based, not lead, for better shielding without bad secondary effects, for everyday wear, maybe extra pelvic protection during sleep, and designed with potential pregnancy in mind.
And health monitoring.
Yes, periodical, self-sufficient onboard reproductive health exams. With communication lag, they need biosensors for immediate results. This includes mandating contraceptives, like birth control pills, to prevent unplanned high-risk pregnancies. Consistent monitoring is key.
So on the cutting edge, who's actually in the race to make space babies? Literally. Are there companies actively trying to solve this?
Yes, there are pioneers. Spaceborne United, based in the Netherlands, is probably the most prominent name. They are actively trying to tackle reproduction in low gravity.
What's their goal?
Ambitious. Perform conception and early embryo development in space. They see it as essential for independent Mars settlements. They're initially focused on partial gravity effects, but also hope to improve Earth-based IVF techniques through their space research.
Have they made progress?
They have. They've developed a miniaturized IVF and embryo incubator-like CD-ROM size with microchannels to control the process. A prototype is apparently ready for launch. They recently did a high-altitude drop test to check radiation impact on organic material,
What's their timeline?
focusing on that first stage conception, early development for the next 5-6 years, starting with animal models, mammalian gametes, and then eventually human cells if validated. Their target is achieving 5 days of in-space embryo development.
And what about natural conception, especially with space tourism looming?
Spaceborne United strongly advises against it. They see the huge ethical and medical risks. They worry about tourism becoming a magnet for couples that want crazy bragging rights, but call it medically irresponsible and unethical right now.
Are there other related technologies?
Artificial wombs being developed for premature babies on Earth could potentially contribute someday, offering a controlled environment, perhaps bypassing some maternal health risks. But that's still very speculative for space. But overall, the reproductive side of space settlement has been kind of sidelined, hasn't it? Due to the ethical complexities.
It feels like the elephant in the room.
It really is. As Spaceborne CEO Dr. Edelbrook put it, it's pretty pointless to spend all those billions preparing settlements on Mars if you cannot fix the reproductive challenge.
Is there a sort of prestige factor driving this too?
There seems to be, yeah. Some countries or entities are interested in enabling the very first human baby conceived in space as a unique achievement.
But actual human trials, pregnancy, birth in space, that's still way off.
Firmly in the distant future, according to researchers like Woodruff and Tash. Decades away, most likely. The fundamental question remains, can humans, far more complex than mice, truly adapt? It's still a huge biological unknown.
So, wrapping this all up, what does this incredibly detailed and frankly sometimes unsettling deep dive tell us about our future as an aspiring multiplanetary species? It seems crystal clear that while the ambition to colonize Mars is sky high, the biological and ethical hurdles for human reproduction out there are just monumental, maybe even overwhelming.
I think that's fair to say.
From that microscopic dance of sperm and egg struggling in microgravity to the invisible, constant assault of cosmic radiation on fragile developing life, every single step seems fraught with peril and deep uncertainty.
And if we connect that to the bigger picture, yeah, it really suggests that becoming truly interplanetary isn't just about brilliant engineering. It's not just rockets and habitats. It's a profound, challenging, deeply ethical biological journey. We've seen hints of success with simpler animals, amazing research on stem cells, determined efforts by companies like Spaceborne. But the sheer volume of scientific unknowns, combined with those deeply controversial ethical implications, it means we are still miles, maybe light years away from that lustful Martian dream of families just casually making a new home among the stars. The very nature of humanity, our biology, our values, they might all need profound reevaluation for this to ever happen.
Which leaves us and you, our listener, with a really heavy, almost existential question to ponder, doesn't it? If humanity were to face some irreversible threat here on Earth, climate change, asteroids, runaway AI, whatever the scenario might be, and reproduction off-world becomes our absolute last resort, our ultimate backup plan for species survival, how far are we truly willing to push our ethical boundaries, our biological limits, to ensure humanity continues beyond Earth?
Yeah.
Is that imperative for species survival strong enough to justify actions, choices that would be utterly unthinkable, maybe morally abhorrent right here on our comfortable home planet? What stands out most profoundly to you about all this?
It's a lot to think about. Thank you for joining us on this thought-provoking and definitely multi-layered deep dive.